where I come from, you know, it's Puerto Rico, and I wasn't into Puerto Rican literature to the point that I was like, I want to be a Puerto Rican author.
Right.
I'm into writing. I'm into essays. I'm into short stories. I'm into different things. But my main influences are Edgar Allan Poe, Frank Herbert, and Neil Gaiman, J.K. Rowling, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show that just because my first language is Spanish doesn't mean that I can't dominate English, first off.
Mm-hmm.
Second off, just because I'm from Puerto Rico doesn't mean that I can't write something that connects globally.
Yeah.
And third off, that there are no limitations unless you impose them on yourself.
Right.
So, I think.
So tell everybody about where you grew up, what your influences were in your youth that you feel kind of paved the way or shown the path you're on now.
So, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, lived 36 years there with the exception of a summer in New York. That was a lot of fun, but that I can't say it was formative. I can say it was a lot of fun. Well, it was, it's kind of formative, but still, I'm not sure how much that impacted in terms of my writer journey. Other stuff had a bigger impact. It was good to put me in a big city, but apart from that, I'm always going to be an island boy at heart. In terms of things that put me on my way, I think as a kid, when I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that's the first book that really connected. I was like 8 or 9 at the time. And that stuck with me. And then I wrote a lot of poetry when I was a teenager. And after that, I stopped writing for a while. I would maybe journal and whatnot, and then I would put a lot of effort into the test, the essays that I had to do for like either literature or history or English or anything. And I would always get good marks on what I wrote in terms of that. This was a fun test. This was refreshing. So I don't know if part of me always had that desire to write, even when I was taking a break from it. And then when I went into advertising, I met a couple of wonderful people that invited me to write in a blog. And I wrote in that blog, anonymously, don't look me up, for 9 years. We wrote 9 years, and we were a notorious little bunch talking about the industry. And some people still actually have found me and my books for certain random reasons. I'm not going to give you the clues. And then one day, I'm sitting at home, I'm lounging about, chatting, watching TV, I'm listening to Bach because why not? Why not? It makes a lot of sense with me. If you see my shuffle, my playlist on shuffle, it makes no sense. It's like Wu-Tang, then Bach, and then video game music, and then Meshuggah, and you go like, what's wrong with this individual? And I'm like, read my books, and maybe you'll get a look into that. And I saw a commercial for the Underworld series. I was like, I can write something like that. And it began as a self-imposed dare almost. And as I wrote, it just became more and more personal, and it was a very gratifying experience. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's see how long it takes. And it took 6 years. 6 years of lunch hours with notebooks, of sneaking away to the bathroom to write. And it just, the more I did it, the more I realized that it meant a lot to me, a lot more than I even thought in the first place. And it's not like, oh, I want to be a writer and I want to be famous. It's, oh, I write, I love writing, I wouldn't mind being successful at this. It's a different approach. And the more people that you meet, the more you realize that some people are in it just for the money and the fame.
Right.
I wouldn't mind the money or the fame.
To a certain extent, right?
To a certain extent. Talking about my writer journey, we spoke that I had a stalker on one occasion. It's like I couldn't get the money first. I got the stalker first. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
But I published the book, and just the reaction from people and how I've grown as a writer and how I've gotten to know myself through what I write. Because some people focus on a genre.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's not my shtick. My shtick is to explore the different wells of my soul and see just how much, how deep I can go. And with poetry, I can do that. With nonfiction, I do it. With urban fantasy, I do it. With middle grade, I do it. Because if you know me, you know that I can be very serious on certain occasions. I can be very intense, but I can be like a goof off.
Yeah.
And a goofball. And I think all of that just lets me express all of who I am.
Yeah.
And it just, who knew that I could have so much fun with a banana? And that sounds like an awful sentence. But just to know that doing a stupid little video on Fridays, it'll cheer someone up.
Were your parents artistic at all? Did they have any desire to do arts, or did they do anything that you know of?
Dad was a workaholic, and I can't say that he was into any sort of art. Mom was into different stuff, but it's not like she wrote or she painted or anything. She was always a fantastic saleswoman, and the art of the sale in terms of when you saw Mom and the dynamics. She had a clothing store called Suzette in Old San Juan. Changed locations a couple of times, and I will actually be writing a short story series set in one of the stores, because there was a second floor, and I would hang out there alone, left to my own devices, with instead of a boomerang, I had clothes hangers, and I would go on adventures and whatnot. So it'll be like that. But artistically speaking, no. I found out later in life that I believe my aunt wrote a book, but I haven't been able to find it. She was actually an AIDS patient, one of the first ones, because she passed away in 87 or 88. And I was told that she died in a car accident when I was a kid. And eventually, when I was 15 or 16, the truth came out, and I'm like, whoa! I've been almost close to a decade. I've got light to my face. I've been trying to find it. I don't know if she wrote under a pseudonym or something, but the people that would know about it, they don't know where to find that book. So in terms of artistic expression, she would be the only one that I can think of that had any sort of inkling towards that. If you see me and my brothers, it's like the brain intellectual one, super plan guy. The other one is the go-to, also super organized, but in terms of, if there's a brick wall in terms of life and you need to get through it, that's your guy. And he's also the best looking one, the Casanova. And my wife will resent that. I know you love me.
And so will Jason Lavelle.
Yeah. But I'm the kooky, quirky, random one, and I've always been kooky, quirky, and random.
Yeah.
I used to say weird, but rather than weird, it's more quirky and random.
Right.
The more I see what weird is, because when you read bizarro fiction, you go yeah, I'm not that weird.
Yeah.
I can write it, and eventually I'll take a stab at it just to see what the hell comes out of my brain.
Yeah.
But that's weird.
I'm curious to find out, and this is something I don't know. What came first for you? Was it the short stories, the poetry, or the fiction?
The first thing that I wrote was short stories when I was a kid. Fourth grade would be 9 years old. That's the first time I wrote something, 9 and 10 years old.
And were they structured stories?
They were structured, but it was a school assignment.
Yeah.
And I've always been cheeky, and I've always had a sort of sailor's mouth inkling towards me, and I have to monitor myself. When I got a C in conduct because I would write that I traveled 10,000, and I would write a little box that said censored miles. And I was 10, so But those were the first short stories. Like when I was 9 and 10, I started with that. Love letters to young lasses when I was 7.
That seems to be how every poet gets started.
No, that happened too. I actually wrote letters and poetry for 2 girls in the 2nd grade. You're gonna go big, go away.
Nice.
It was just so weird, but when you're a kid, still. And when I was a teenager, that's when I got way into poetry. It was a way for me to not only express what I felt, but in a way where I was saying it out in the open, but cryptic enough so that it was hidden. So it's like the silhouette of a truth.
Interesting.
I would put it there, and people would have an idea of what's going on, but you don't get the detail.
Right.
I know why I put this word here and this and this. And it just helped me just cope with a lot.
Nice. How do you think it shaped your writing now? Do you think it shaped your writing at all? Do you feel like it influences you at all?
I keep writing poetry because I just think that poetry makes me a better writer in terms of how I write.
Yeah.
It apart from rhythm and alliteration and whatnot, it just makes you think creatively of how to construct words. And I enjoy saying things, even in real life, in a way that people go like, I'm going to use that, or that makes sense, or that's different. I like that. Rather than being correct, I think most importantly for me is to be unique. Okay. This is my dark poetry collection called Dark Strands. Stories beneath the surface. The idea is people who say that they don't like poetry and like the other stuff normally say, oh, but I love The Raven. So you kind of like poetry. And if you like music, you like poetry. You just like it musicalized. There's a world of poetry out there, and you gotta give yourself a shot. This collection, I wanted to do something dark but elegant. I didn't want to go full dark. I wanted to do something dark and classy, let's put it this way. There's a poem from the perspective of a vampire. This is super rude and I don't care. This is delicious. There's a short story at the end. I've mentioned it before, Miranda and the Broken Ghost. The thing is that it's hard to read because 72 lines, 9 lines to a stanza, rhyme scheme, abacadabra. It's just a bit overwhelming to read, which I get, but apparently people enjoy it and say, oh, that was kind of weird but cool. Exactly. If you give yourself the shot to read stuff, you can find stuff. So here are my 2 examples of something dark but classy. Caught Inside. Caught Inside is about surfing. When you're surfing, the worst thing that can happen to you, in my opinion, is that you're swimming towards the lineup and a set comes and it's going to land on you. You have all the time in the world to freak out, burn oxygen because you're freaking out. And sincerely, put yourself in the worst mindset possible. And sometimes life experiences are that way. The more you think about it and the more time you have to let it percolate, the worse it is in the end. So, Caught Inside. A cold line breaks the horizon. Throat locks, muscles seize. The brain crashes into awareness. You are about to be reminded of that little thing called mortality. A liquid explosion drives fist first. The back of my neck frowns at the meeting. Size comes to your attention. You are nothing and no one, especially when faced with but an instant of nature. Coral rakes flesh, currents gang up. Silence is as alien a concept as anything ever imagined. If you listen closely, those are the waves laughing as air escapes with you caught inside. And the second poem I'm going to read from this collection. You can see my pretty mug there. My pretty mug here. Hey, all mugs. I'm a muggle.
Second selection is called The Box. It was a reflection of when my dad passed. Just the whole burial and that entire experience. The Box. Flowers smile on either side. Picture framed, guest book signed. Why so many strangers among the dearly beloved? Rarely questioned, never shunned. The box there lay, with its flower crown near basalt gray. Joined in hands in holy prayer before the box is buried gently beneath the layer. There lies only a box, nothing more, though someone less.
Unique and memorable, and you want to be correct, but you also want to break a couple of rules along the way.
Right, sure.
And reading Terry Pratchett, page after page of quotableness, and you know that I don't know if he had actually poetry collections, but he had to be a poet at heart.
Yeah,
because it's like what can I get from these words, from point A to point B in a sentence? How can I make this sentence special enough for a person to go, oh, that's fantastic?
Where does music fit into all of this for you? Was it something you started later in life? Was it something you did as you were learning yourself and writing and discovering yourself? And was it for the lasses even?
No, I picked up a guitar when I was 17. So that's pretty late.
Yeah, a little bit later.
And I took 2 classes, and I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. And everything that I've learned how to play, I've done it by myself and not even knowing how to read music. It's just what tones make sense to me, what chord progressions make sense to me, and again, being blind and making music, it's an interesting process for me. Part of me wants to have more tools, and part of me doesn't want to soil it with knowledge, because I think there's something special of just looking for the right chord and just feeling when you go like, that's the chord.
Yeah.
Even if you land in your signature chord or whatnot, it's like, yeah, that D is me, or that E minor. E minor, I think, was the first chord that I ever played, and it would be interesting to try to analyze and see if that chord played a role in my life, because E minor is, apart from being a building block to so many songs, it's a minor chord, so it's sad, and it has a little bit of melancholy in it. And I do think that a lot of my writing and a lot of what I write, although it could have a positive edge to it, or it could have, there's always a bit of melancholy at some point. So I think that definitely influences, in terms of music in general, music plays a huge role in what I write and how I write it.
Nice.
In terms of the artists that I admire and look up to the music that they make. Pearl Jam is all about counterculture and doing things by their own rules, and I admire that enough to try to apply it as much as possible.
I think he also has a lot of observant qualities to the music too. They observe a lot of things, and they create stories based upon what they're observing in that respect.
They're my favorite band also because they have such a wide variety of emotions that they cover.
Yeah.
And an angry Pearl Jam song is really angry.
Yeah.
And
like a Black or a...
No, but Black is heartbroken.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful heartbroken song, but if you hear blood from Verses,
yeah,
that song is punching the wall good.
Yeah.
Animal is simplistic in nature, and I've heard different stories in terms of where the lyrics came from.
Yeah.
But you feel that energy, and since they run such a wide gamut of emotions, I think that's why. And just seeing a guy that has this deep voice doing a falsetto, you go like, this guy's in touch with his emotions, and I want to be that.
I'm wondering how much the music has shaped your poetry. Do you feel like, because it is a poetic expression in some instances, you have stanzas, they also have kind of a discipline. A song has a discipline like a poem typically does, and I'm curious, do you see your influence from the poetry to the music and the music to the poetry, or is there no changing in that respect?
In many ways, but not a single way. It's always going to be to express my vision of something, even from a cheeky little poem about a cantaloupe to social commentary that uses pejorative language in a way that might offend people, but at least it makes them pay attention. I think it all plays into it. I'm also a huge fan of Annie DeFranco. I have a couple of poems that I was really listening to her a lot, and I wanted to use that to express what I had. And actually, a lot of who I am in terms of my opinions towards drug usage and whatnot, and the things that I've seen, and about being Hispanic and being bilingual, and living in a black and white world that I don't choose to either of those sides. That does play into it a lot. Some of those poems are actually in the bilingual collection, so maybe people haven't been exposed to them, but they're borderline slam poetry.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been comfortable in going into a public setting to like a poetry house and reading poetry just because I'm not sure, but I love exploring the different things and different aspects of poetry. I mentioned Annie DeFranco. I mentioned sometimes a process that I'll do is mishearing lyrics.
Mm.
There's a poem that starts, "So I saw it in the soy sauce," and it's because there's a Nick Drake song. It's Pink Moon actually, and I forgot the first lyric, but it's me mishearing that lyric and
First lyric says.
Yeah, and then running with it, because when it comes to poetry, the fun thing is finding inspiration in different things.
Yeah,
I like catching lightning in a bottle. I like developing other poems, and I just like challenging myself in different things.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Strands has one of the hardest poems that I had to write, which is Miranda and the Broken Ghost, and it's a narrative poem. When there's a ghost in it, there's a gun. The rhyme scheme, it's 8 stanzas, 9 lines to a stanza. The rhyme scheme is abacadabra, and it was a pain in the ass to write. But I wanted to challenge myself that way. And then in the latest collection that I released was Relay of Rhymes, and I have The Madness of Jonathan J. George. So I had certain things that I was reading. I was reading Bukowski, but I was also reading Poe. I was reading a bit of Lord Byron. And I was also reading H.P. Lovecraft. And I'm like, let's see what happens. So it's an amalgam of all those things to have an 800-line poem, 100 lines to every movement, 8 movements of the progress and the exploration of madness through the perspective of this character.
Poets will understand that, but not many people will understand how much work that really is.
That one was a chunker, but Miranda was harder to write. And there's actually one, I think it's in Black Tie Affair, called Alliteration the Zenith. 4 words per line, A through Z. When you get to the Q's and the X's and making that make sense in the poem, that's when you go like, whoa, what do I do? I think I'm gonna have a T and a thing, and see if I can, because you paint yourself into a corner, and it just digging yourself out is part of the fun actually. Other times it's just, what can I write in 3 minutes?
Yeah. When do you feel like, because you started writing so early on in your life, so when do you feel like this transitioned from a hobby to, okay, I'm going to start publishing and try to make this my life, my business, who I am?
I don't know if I'm still at a point where I want it to be my life and my business.
Right.
But it's nowhere near that.
But you're at a professional. You're doing it professionally now. But I mean, it's not who it's not your everyday job and your only income. But
there's a lot of hours that go into it.
Right. Yeah. But my when you were just screwing around, fucking around writing, and now you're really concentrating on making sure that you're writing something to be published or to have out there and in a way that you want to present it. So when do you think you made that transition?
I think the first step is actually chapter 11 or chapter 12 of Only Human.
Huh?
People have asked me, because it's a chunky book, it's 164,000 words. So a lot of people say, oh, you have to pare it down to be more accessible. And I'm like, that's the story.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to go down, because it was originally 170,000, and I pared that down to 164, and I'm like, okay, and that's reading the whole thing through and seeing what you can cut out, and that included one of the hardest edits that I had to do was it was a scene that was about 2.5 pages, and I forget, it was around 1,300 words, and I looked at it,
and you didn't want to cut it,
and I highlighted it. No, I highlighted it, and I was like, okay, got up, served myself a drink, came back, took a sip, click delete, click save, turned off the computer. So, but I kept a lot of Only Human. I will always keep that book because it does show when I found my voice, and I stopped trying to impress people and it just got swept away. And I think it shows. There's a lot of exposition in those first 10 or so chapters, and then something clicks, and there's actually a really short chapter of a funeral, and that psychologically, I'm sure some people can have a blast with that in terms of that being where I found my voice.
Yeah.
But I think that was the time that I really took it seriously, and then I finished it, and I talked to people, and when I saw that I could actually do it, and when you see your book in person for the first time, you go like, yeah. And I everything happened in a way where I just I had to commit. So I released Only Human in 2013, and then in 2014 was the first time I participated in the Puerto Rico Comic Con. I had to set up on Thursday, and my books arrived on Thursday. So just try to imagine how many calories I burned, how much stress went into it. And this was me.
Yeah.
This chunker, this worthy of a rat-killing book because it's so heavy. This was me, and I did this on my own.
Yeah.
That was pretty special. And then seeing the people's reaction in my first year, it's like I had that book. I had one poetry collection, which I also insisted it had to be the picture that I took, and I wanted to do the cover myself, and it's very simplistic. So I had Only Human, I had Between the Tides, and I had the first incarnation of the Daydreams on the Turbid Shore, which are middle grade short stories meant to cleanse the palate after a really rough day.
Right.
Those, we actually printed them out, and me with my in-laws, we hand bound them with like ribbons, and we sold them. I still probably have a couple of copies in Puerto Rico somewhere.
Nice.
Seeing people's reaction to what I did, how I did it, and that I didn't ask for permission and just did it. I'm like, if people don't like it, then fine. And that year, I met so many people that still read me and still go to the Comic-Con. Specifically, I have to be one of their first 4 stops. And for some people, it has to be the first stop.
Wow.
But let's not say it's everyone. And if they disagree, comment.
No matter where you are in the lineup,
they look for my booth.
Yeah. Interesting.
And that's always been really special.
Yeah.
In terms of this year. When I went to the Puerto Rico Comic Con, I hadn't gone in 2018, and some people were like, "I'm so happy to see you back because you didn't come last year."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wow!" And it wasn't one person that said it; it was a couple, and I'm like, "Okay." So, it just felt really special. But having people grow up with your books, literally, and then people going through stuff and reading your stuff, and you getting a private message and them saying, "This helped me go through this." When I saw that, I knew that I wanted to do that. And with the blog also, it was intense to take as a compliment, but it was very heartwarming and just very special. Someone said, I needed to read this to feel okay about myself today. And I'm like, damn.
Wow.
So, and again, a friend, a kind word and the right moment can save a life.
Sure.
Or just steer someone in the right direction.
Absolutely.
We were talking about that the other day. And I've had that happen a lot. And just by being honest, not judging, and being kind. And I find a lot of value in that. As an indie author, I also want to be known for that. I try to practice what I preach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have a temper. Yeah, I might be intense and whatnot. But if someone needs help, then I can help them. And my gut says help them, because that's another thing. You have to know when to say no.
Yeah.
Which is tricky. And if your gut is saying this doesn't feel safe,
don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Because there's sometimes that happens and it makes no reason.
Yeah. specifics. You know, the toughest character. What's the toughest character you think you've ever had to create that you really had a hard time getting into and kind of getting into their headspace and kind of getting them into a story?
I don't think I've had a hard time. Again, it's tapping into the different wells within you. Mm-hmm. Some scenes have been emotionally draining to write, but it's not that I couldn't get in the headspace. It's that I know where I'm going and I know it's going to be intense. And book 3 is going to have a lot of that. And people will realize that I cried through a lot of those chapters. Because it's just me processing things. In terms of getting in the headspace, people say, oh, so what about the villain? It's like, sometimes you have a really bad day. And flashes and thoughts come in your brain. So rather than express it in a way that would be, I don't know, counterproductive, why not put it on a piece of paper?
Yeah, make it the villain.
And again, it's all about finding that little twist of how I would express it. I have vampires, I have Therians, not werewolves, Therians. I have angels, I have
we're going to
demons.
talk about
that. I have demons and I have humans. And actually there's 2 humans. There's Nathaniel and there's the bad guy.
Yeah.
And any other human that appears is probably a secondary character. And I say that completely comfortable. And it's with a purpose. Because it's just to show that there are different gamuts of what we can do. And actually, there's a prequel short story from the villain of the Human Cycle series. And it does show where he came from. It doesn't show where he broke, but you get a good look at what probably set him off.
Okay.
And it was really interesting to write because, you know, like a one-dimensional villain, does that really exist in real life? No, something broke someone or something made sense to someone at some point that they said, let's go with it. And it's not necessarily the best thing in life, but it happens.
I'm curious, though, because you do read your stuff back and you enjoy what you read, have you ever read a character that you kind of disliked? You know, not the way you wrote it, maybe, but just in general, just disliking that character.
Nathaniel's annoying as hell. The protagonist is annoying as hell. But I think it's just a reaction to what makes him human. And the thing with Nathaniel is that as a human, he's painting by numbers. He's going on autopilot, and he's jaded. He's completely jaded. And then he just goes with the flow and doesn't really take responsibility for his actions. He does respond, and he does end up being an asset. But it's a lot of responding. It's not proactive and whatnot. So in that sense, I completely disagree with Nathaniel. But he does express a lot of how I felt in my life, where it's just, life is throwing me this, and I have to do this. And he has a lot of that going on, and that's annoying on several levels. And then there's other people that just reflect different things that I've seen in my life. From all the characters, I'm fascinated by Bill. Bill and I don't want to spoil it.
Okay, don't.
Bill and his friend. Bill and his cousin. Let's say that. I'm fascinated by that because the things that I explore, I'm just amazed that I haven't gotten hate mail. I think that if I ever make it big, and a lot of people read that, I'm gonna get a lot of flack for that. But it's me making a point again.
Okay, so he's jaded in your mind, but what do you think, Nathaniel, for an audience? What do you think the audience should be concentrating on when they're reading about Nathaniel? What would you say, as the architect of Nathaniel and his world, you would like to see more audiences pay attention to that maybe they're not getting right off the bat?
It took something drastic for him to realize that he has potential. That's pretty much. I just summed up Nathaniel and his process in 2 years. The first book the series focuses on body, mind, and eventually soul. So nice. Physically, he's starting to discover a lot of things about himself, and eventually he gets cocky and he has to pay the price in the second book. In the second book, he's fragmented. How so? You have to read the book.
Yeah.
But he is fragmented, and because he's fragmented, he's in constant pain. So, for one, book one is all about discovering the potential that you have and expressing that potential. The second one is not losing sense of yourself. And I'm not sure if people get all of that from his character, because he can be whiny.
Yeah.
But his journey is that. It's reconciling the potential of his humanity to save humanity. Because I always say that the series is about how much he is willing to sacrifice of his humanity to save humanity, which is actually accurate as well. They're both true statements of the character in the series.
Nice. When do you feel like a character takes shape for you in your writing process?
When the dialogue gets written by itself.
Nice.
If you understand, and when you write something, you go that he or she wouldn't say that. That's not how they would behave. Those two things. But I think the first idea or the first sign is when the dialogue is just clicking, and you go like, that's what they would say, and that's how they would say, and you start to see even the rhythm of how they talk, and the topics they're interested in, and the way that they attack a certain topic. And it's almost a psychotic experience. Because
a little mind out of body experience.
Because there's a lot of characters. And there's a lot of characters that have a lot of on-screen time on the pages. And just when it just makes sense, that's when you know that you nailed it. And with, like I said, when I got to like chapter 11, that's when everything started to make sense. And then in book 2, other stuff started to make sense, and it's become a really personal thing. And you see how part of you is reflected in that character, and then the character takes what's yours and says, no, but this is mine, and this is my opinion. I know you have your opinion, and you wrote me.
Yeah.
I get that, but you're not in charge.
Did that happen in Given to Fly as well?
Given to Fly was just a feel-good book to write.
Yeah.
I wanted to write like a throwback adventure book, no violence, all fun, and a full-on adventure. The thing is that the two main characters in Given to Fly are John Rivers, which is an 11-year-old boy, who realizes that there's no magic in his new house because it lives 2 houses down, and Fayed Oddstein, which is the owner of Odd Manor, who lives in said house full of magic. Fayed Oddstein is my literary representation of myself. If you read the Daydreams, you're going to see JD. JD is not Fayed. Seriously, a shrink is going to say, like, can we have coffee? But for me, Given to Fly was a lot more concise in me influencing characters directly from different things in my life.
Okay.
There's a bookworm that's based on Noam Chomsky. Just because. And it's a kid's book. It's a middle grade book.
Yeah.
But at some point, I want a kid to say, who's Noam Chomsky? And to give him a try. And even if they disagree with him, to read him. Because I think that there's a lot of writers like him that they could offer you in your life in terms of objective opinion. Because there's people that hate him.
Yeah.
But he can make a point quite well.
Yeah.
He's done an entire career out of that.
Right.
Out of that and several other things. I wanted to do a character based on things from Tori Amos. So there's a character named Tallulah, which is a feisty little girl, and there's Scarlet, which is Tallulah's mom. They appear. I'm not going to say how. I wanted to do a tribute to my favorite comic series, which is actually The Blood Sword. The Blood Sword, and the main character there is Hiro Hua, and there's Mr. Hero in Given to Fly. And there's different things in my life and my youth that I just wanted to express in a way where it was just fun.
Yeah.
So rather than it being an exploration, it was an expression of things that have made me happy or have made me think in a way that makes me smile.
Nice.
That's the goal of that book, is for you to finish a chapter and to kind of feel good. And to be curious what the hell else is going to come out of his brain. And again, there's some topics that I do cover.
JD, I'm not going to use the curse word of multi-genre author because that's not fair to you. You're a multifaceted person, and I think it reflects in what you write, not how you write. But you do, in that sense, create worlds in different ways, and you have many worlds that you've created over the period of your time and created in your creation process. And I'm wondering how you approach that. What is it that you really hold on to? How do you, bring it into the writing? What do you hold back? Is there things you keep handy? Is there things you share on blogs? How your approach is to what you reveal within that world and how you reveal it?
Well, as long as it doesn't offer spoilers, just ask and I'll give you an answer. If it offers spoilers, I won't give you the answer. It's as simple as that. Some people have asked my method through different things, and I'm really open about it. Again, because I do it in a way that if anyone tries to replicate it, they're not going to get the results because it just makes sense to me. It's like, like a baseball guy, with their swing. If you try to teach them the fundamentals, yeah, but a person has to find their own swing. I found my swing a long time ago. But again, in terms of method, if anyone has a question, I say, and it's always an evolving process, and I always...
Well, let me refine this a little bit. Let me talk about your swing. Okay. In the idea of your swing, do you have a formula in which you follow for what you reveal within your books and things like that, or is it just a feeling? Is it just because you have a confidence in your swing, you just go with it and not think about it?
Every project is its own beast, and I have a method for each project. Each poetry collection has its own. That one's a bit more flexible because I'll write a poem here, a poem there, and whatever makes sense, and then I'll give it a bit more shaping. I try to imagine it as writing songs and then trying to think of the track listing. For me, poetry has that. That's why I describe poetry collections like albums. Because you have to read it, and I want it to have a certain type of arc and rhythm in terms of what you read and when you read it. Some people then read it out of sequence, and I'm like, that works too.
Yeah, I'm one of those.
Yeah, but you're not alone, and a lot of people do that. And that's why I wrote Relay of Rhymes the way that I wrote it. Because that one's meant to be like, flipped and wherever you land. And it also makes sense it's not as linear as some of the other ones that have more of a pace and an arc. That one's a bit more random, and I wanted it to be more random.
Right.
To give you an explanation of my process for different projects, Given to Fly, I had index cards. I had an index card for each character, for each chapter, for each scene, and I used that. And while I was writing, I had the index cards of what I was writing there. For the Human Cycle series, I have a document that has like 200 pages of random stuff. And if I'm feeling like I'm kind of getting stuck, I just flip through it, and eventually something's going to pop out for some reason. And I don't even know what that reason is. It could be something it could be an ingredient in a recipe. It could be a way that some people brew tea. It could be something in architecture, or religion, or history, or geography, or topography. It's a hefty document, and I'm not going to use a lot of it, which I think is interesting, because when people make a marble statue, they try to use as much of the marble as possible.
Right, because it's expensive.
I pare it down until there's like a marble, and I used a huge block of stuff just to feed that little marble. But that marble is going to be smooth by the end.
Yeah,
it's going to be weird, or at least quirky and random. But
I get you.
Yeah. It'll make sense.
Yeah.
So, for others, another project that I'm doing, I did a bullet list of the entire plot, and as I write, I knock off a bullet. It's to see what works best. And what lets me tap. But
it's never the same, right? So
I try to keep it fresh, just for me. Some people are in it to get to the goal. I'm in it for the journey and the process. I love the process. The process for each one and what I tap into is different every single time, and I love that. I love that I land on different things, and still it's very me.
Right.
And I will always push for that as much as possible, just to keep myself guessing. Eventually, I'm probably gonna get really stupid, really weird, really random, with one process, and I'll go back to something that worked, but I'll still give it a go.
Yeah.
And if it works, who knows? Maybe I'll just keep it.
Yeah, interesting. With the poetry aspect of things, I kind of equated this to you earlier when we were talking off camera about you kind of have a mailroom approach to your poetry where you slot them into certain slots and they fit into certain slots. Have you ever had a situation or an opportunity where you said, okay, I really have these three great poems that I want to put out, but 3 poems is not going to make a book, so I need to write something to round it out? Have you ever been in that position, or do you just wait are you patient enough to wait till you have enough that you feel like it can be a collection?
I'm open to, if I get an idea, if I have 3 poems and then I go like, but I can do it around this, I'll welcome that idea.
Mm-hmm.
But I have all the patience in the world in terms of I want it to be what I want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the next poetry collections will take longer because I want them to be longer. I want them to be chunkier. I want people to see more value for their money rather than being on the fence. But then you see the behavior of other people and they don't care. They see a thin book, they read 4 poems and they say, I'm in. Here's $5.
Yeah. How often is it that this happens where you have your design, you have a collection, and you're ready to put it out, but then you look at it, you rearrange it, and one doesn't fit, and you pluck it? Does that happen quite often?
That does happen because it's a different type of editing process. And when you see what you're going for and something just feels off, and there's still variety in the collection, and again, I do try to have a range of emotions within the approach that I'm going for, or the topic, or whatever I'm exploring with that. But there's just things that feel off, and when I read it, I go like, or maybe it's even in the pages. You have like a different thing, and you enjoy how it looks, and then you have one that's really small or really big, and you go like, does it fit in another place? And you try to, and when you see that it doesn't fit, you go like, and this puzzle piece is from another puzzle. You put it in another pile. What that has led to is that from one collection, 2 have been born. And I go like, so I'm going to do something in this vein and this vein. And that happens a lot. And
so nothing you've plucked has ever just been in the wastebasket. You hold on to it in hopes that it reaches another collection.
Even stuff that I don't think is good enough, I keep so I can reread it and try to understand why I say it's not good enough. Or maybe it'll give me an idea to do something that is good enough.
That's awesome. So with the Human Cycle series, you have vampires and you have Therians, not werewolves.
Right.
And you have humans, and you have tropes and things that you tackle and you go into. And besides them not sparkling, and besides their names and what you call them, what went into your thought process into how you wanted them to be different? Was it just the names? Or was there something deep and existential that you wanted to have that would be different for people to read something like this for?
Well, I wanted to explore a different aspect of specifically vampires. I was fascinated by Interview with the Vampire, the movie. The book, not so much. But the movie, I just think it's, apart from beautifully shot, I thought Tom Cruise was fantastic, and so was Brad Pitt. And I think Nathaniel has a lot of Brad Pitt.
Yeah, I can see that.
That whining thing. But I wanted to take the tropes and sidestep them and do character explorations of different vampires.
Nice.
One of the main things of the series is that we all have cardinal points. Each person has different cardinal points. Again, exploration of potential. How we access those cardinal points depends on life. Vampires and Therians and angels and different entities have an edge over humans simply because they have longer lifespans. Some people unlock and untap. I think that's more. I haven't seen Avatar: The Airbender, but I think it would be more in line with what I've read from that series in terms of tapping into abilities.
Okay.
So each vampire taps into different abilities. So that might also have a bit of X-Men in it in terms of mutant powers and whatnot. And Liam, which is another of my favorite characters, he's a chain-smoking vampire who's been smoking for centuries. And that was actually based a bit on my best friend and other people that I know. I took bits and pieces from people that I know. But he's into science, and he does that, but he's actually mostly like a vegan vampire.
Okay.
So he does that, and his abilities is that he's the only one from that group that can communicate telepathically. He can have a direct link with people, or he can talk to different people if they're in a range. And Daniel is more on the super speed, super strength, but his powers, for me, take a backseat to the impacts of the things that he actually used to discover Nathaniel.
Mm-hmm.
There are different things in the Human Cycle series that they use. One is everything's based on Ignalum. Ignalum is my tribute to Frank Herbert, melange, backwards.
Nice.
There are no sandworms here. But there is kind of like a spice, and I wanted to do something really messed up with that, and I reveal where Ignalum comes from in book 2.
Okay.
And for me, that reveal was extremely satisfying, because if anyone knows that I'm a huge fan of Frank Herbert and Dune and the concept of spice, when they see the nature of it, it just makes you go and look at the first book and go, oh Lord.
Nice. I think people would be remiss if I didn't ask about why you go with Therians instead of werewolves.
I just think it's cheeky in the sense because werewolf sounds like soap.
Yeah.
Werewolf.
Yeah.
I do enjoy, but werewolf, I have the same problem as shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Because it's like such a bland word. It's a compound word, and I wanted to see.
You want to have more complexities.
I wanted to have a lot more complexities, and the nature and origin stories of where both vampires and Therians come from. I actually do mention in book 2.
Yeah.
Therian is a play on Therion. It's a play on Therion with an O, which is wild beast in ancient Greek.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hint that werewolves have been around for a long time. And I didn't want to limit myself to werewolf. I like the concept of shapeshifter in terms of, but I wanted everyone to express their own humanity through an animal. So some people do it through a bear. It's like their spirit animal. Some people through a bear, some people through a jaguar, some people through a jackal. Some people, the second book has werefoxes, the Japanese kitsune. And it's all based on the folklore for the different regions.
That's awesome. All right. So what does every JD Estrada book have to have, no matter what?
Words.
Look at you. Oh, you're so clever.
No. And without saying something sappy like heart or something, let's not say that. Again, something that only I could write. Because I'm not saying that I'm the best at anything, but I do phrase things kind of particularly.
Yeah.
You go like, dude, where the hell? Why did you describe it that way? And I do that in everyday conversation because I just get a kick out of it. I love wordplay, and for me, just finding an interesting way to say something is always going to be fun. It's always going to be fun, and every single book and every single project that I have, even the blank comics, have that. Because the dialogue and how I describe things, it's very particular, and you have to read it and go, yeah, JD wrote that.
Nice. And
if it doesn't have that, I missed the mark. And up till now, 15 books in, I've nailed it 15 times.
Nice.
So, okay, I might not have the sales, but I have a really at ease conscience in terms of that, and a lot of satisfaction. I'm always creating. I'm always writing something. I think there's actually a sci-fi. It was going to be a novella. I'm not sure if I'm going to extend it. But I did send it to beta read what I had so far to 2 people, and the 2 people had very similar comments, and I did not feel comfortable with the comments. And they both made the same suggestion. Have you read The Martian by Andy Weir? And when I read that and I can process that, maybe I can land in a better place, because I want to do it right, but I'm also taking on a lot. It's like I did read recently a sci-fi short story. And I had written another one which is kind of sci-fi, but not like full-on sci-fi. So it's like a completely new realm for me. And it has that. Did you see Moon?
Yeah.
It has that vibe, and I wanted to go for that vibe. So I would have to rewatch that, read The Martian, and do it in a way where I don't get those comments. Because for people to have the same comments, it means that I'm trying to land in some place that is someone else's and not mine. Yeah. And I need it for it to be my own. Yeah. And I think it's because of where they got to in terms of what I sent them to read. And when they get to the end, they go like, "Oh, this was different." Because I do enjoy like those strong pivots. It's like, "Oh, this is gonna go this way," and it's like. So in that sense, I just think that and
that's a tough thing to accomplish sometimes. It doesn't always work out, right?
Yeah, but I do think I need to stray a bit more from where I landed right now. So will I rewrite the entire thing? Possibly. Yeah. And I just think it's gonna have to be at the right time. But in terms of genres, I have book ideas for standalone books and series. And there's one where just thinking about it makes me nervous. Because I want to write the entire thing and release it in one go, and it's going to be 19 books. Wow. And it's out there. And just the how you're supposed to read it is difficult. Okay. So that might be the itch that I have, that like I really want to write something high fantasy and completely create it. A completely new world, because urban fantasy, you can have fun in different ways, but here I want to do something that's worthy of someone saying, "Oh, we can do an RPG series based on that." I want someone to have that and me to go,
"Sure, go for it.
Let's have a conversation." If the contract makes sense.
Yeah, and the money.
But I have that. I have the idea for a series, another middle grade series that's more adventure. Okay. And it's going to have danger, but it might have violence and other stuff. And I already know several big twists that are already in the series. It's going to be 4 books. I have an 8-book series in mind that's going to be like, try to imagine noir magic. So try to imagine Dick Tracy, or like a really darker noir Dick Tracy with Harry Potter. Without falling on the tropes. And yeah, there might be a nod or two because I'm a huge fan of Joanne. But still, I want to do something where when I write it, I go like, "Oh, that looks cool." And you're reading words. Yeah. Like it gets great. And I recently jotted down ideas for an adventure book where the protagonist is a girl. Nice. So I have all that, and again, it's all just a matter of time.